Nowadays, video games are all about huge open worlds, providing endless entertainment and boring activities disguised as radiant quests. But what if that's not enough? What if we ventured beyond the boundaries set by the game's creators? For some reason, it's a very alluring idea. Maybe it has to do with the combination of breaking the rules and satisfying our curiosity. Usually, when you explore out of bounds, there is nothing there, beyond a bunch of low-resolution models and textures. In Bethesda games, we have the far lands, which are endless expanses with the same texture being repeated over and over. Sometimes there will be some basic geometry resembling cliffs and mountains, but nothing too advanced. But what happens when the far lands, instead of glitzy plains, have detailed landscapes hiding dark secrets never meant to be found? Today I'll be exploring a channel named drb0sch, a very interesting and unique Fallout New Vegas ARG. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. The profile picture is a photoshopped NCR veteran ranger helmet, the description simply says old vids, and the videos have equally short and vague titles. But don't let that fool you, because we have an excellent slow burn horror experience here, relying on a foreboding atmosphere and intense visual storytelling. Let's dive deeper into it and see what mysteries lie beyond the Mojave wasteland. The first entry is called Fallout New Vegas, outside the Mojave outpost. The description says, Mark suggested I did a voiceover, but I had no mic, so the text was a compromise. Intro and outro were cut off for whatever reason, but it's not like anyone outside the forum were gonna watch these anyways. It's a simple tutorial where the player shows us how he got out of the game's boundaries by climbing over the chain link fence at the Mojave outpost. Usually, the gate is locked without a way to open it, and there is an invisible wall, preventing players from going beyond the map's outer limits. But here, that barrier is gone, allowing drb0sch to venture outside. He doesn't do much after that, a little bit of parkour, a little bit of target practice, and he ends the video, giving a shout out to Mark, a name that won't be mentioned again for the rest of the series. The episode is styled like an old YouTube investigation video. The quality is low, the aspect ratio is 4:3, and there is also text commentary, with lots of typos and excessive use of LOL and poor editing. Thankfully, the rest of the videos don't have any commentary, which is good, because it ruined my immersion and felt like a poor imitation of old YouTube. Not much else to talk about, it's a simple intro setting the stage for what's to follow. The adventure continues with an episode called Mojave Raw, followed by a bunch of random letters and numbers. The description here says, raw footage, originally sent to just friends, posted it to the forums unedited in the end. What are those mysterious forums? Do they even exist? Who knows? Nothing remarkable happens at the start, it's just drb0sch exploring the world out of bounds, listening to the game's radio music, goofing around, and spotting weird glitches in the distance. At some point, he encounters a weird machine in the middle of nowhere. It's not interactive and doesn't seem to serve any purpose. After inspecting it for a while, drb0sch gives up and turns his attention to a bizarre abandoned shack in the distance. As the sun sets and day turns into night, the player reaches the shack but finds nothing of note, just ruins. Exploring around, the radio music slowly fades out as he finds a few more wreckages and a random campfire with a lunchbox and a few whiskeys strewn about. As soon as drb0sch interacts with a lunchbox, something unexpected happens. A new quest gets added to their log, named M. Johnson Ver, followed by 3 question marks and some random letters. The quest description is simply labeled M. Johnson Ver _ Quest 5 and includes a marker located in a random place in the wasteland. And that's the end of the video. Why are there random structures all over the far lands? Who is M. Johnson and what is his quest about? Questions that remain unanswered, deepening the mystery of his world. The third episode is simply called Stuck, and the description says, kept exploring, there was nothing else to do. I don't really like this one because of how unrealistically the player acts. He just unlocked a never-before-seen quest in a place no one is supposed to find easily, and what does he do? He tries turning back to the Mojave outpost. But there's no one around anymore, and the way is blocked by an invisible barrier. Dr. Bosch even tries fast traveling, but the game won't allow it, instead showing a message labeled error_void, event_in progress. The radio is also dead, none of the stations work. To be fair, it's obvious he's playing on a PC, so he could use console commands to get back into the game's world, but let's suspend our disbelief for the sake of immersion. Without much choice, Dr. Bosch leaves the outpost, finds some ultra-luxe chips that weren't there before, and decides to go to the unknown quest's marker. Not much is established here except for the fact that the player is now trapped out of bounds, with their only option being to complete the cryptic quest added for some unknown reason. Next up we have Signal, with the description being just the phrase "tuned in." In this episode, Dr. Bosch discovers more of the machines he found in the second video, scattered throughout the wasteland, buried in the ground for some reason. A new signal gets added to the radio as well, named drb0sch. The broadcast is a jumbled mess of static, creepy sounds, music, and barely audible voices. The voices sounded like a mix of transmissions and plain dialogue, but nothing I could make out. The player continues as the strange antennas surround him, almost following him in a way, and finds another abandoned shack. He enters, the radio signal is lost, and the video ends abruptly. Things are starting to get more interesting now, and the questions keep piling up. What is this signal about, and what lies inside the dimly lit shack? Hopefully, we'll find out soon enough. The next episode is named Looting, and the description says pretty bad loot. At least the player is still in high spirits about the whole situation. This video establishes a character trait that I can relate to, being a loot goblin. Dr. Bosch grabs everything that isn't nailed to the floor and gets a weird modified tutorial message when he grabs an unlabeled play cube. Good, now push Z again to let go of the skull. He also loots items such as a finger, a surgical mask, an H9000 camera, which is a renamed Kodak R9000, and a signaling gun, which is just a renamed flare gun. But his most interesting find is a bunch of notes hidden underneath a table. As soon as Dr. Bosch picks them up, the unknown quest updates with a goal now saying MJV_code yourself smarter. The marker changes position as well. As for the notes themselves, they contain pictures of radar coordinates, a radio station located at the summit of the mountain, and a plain view of the Earth, as well as a black box recording. The audio is too distorted to properly decipher, but a few phrases can be heard, such as headed north, coming down hard en route with 500 knots, let's get out of here, wait, who hears this? Send the second one, tally 2. Judging by the items found inside the shack, we can assume a pilot lived there. A story is slowly starting to form, but we still don't know who the pilot is, and his connection with the radio station and the M. Johnson quest. After looting, we have another video named Mojave Raw, followed by random letters and numbers, and this is a long one. The description isn't reassuring either, saying not much happens. Anyway, in this episode, Dr. Bosch goofs around in the desert, looting an ear among some other items and fiddling with a computer terminal outside the shack, while the broadcast signal comes back, playing a mix of loud static, voices, and music over the radio. The terminal is busted beyond repair, with every option being labeled as error and leading nowhere when clicked. Only one of them works, displaying some basic information about the laser rifle and pistol, but it's nothing substantial. Leaving the shack, the player stumbles upon a huge complex of radio towers, probably the one shown in one of the photos from the previous video. With the complex looming in the distance like a menacing behemoth, Dr. Bosch explores around and finds some very interesting items, like water so bad that it kills you with instant radiation poisoning, and human remains, which he consumes immediately without a second thought. Starting to have my doubts about this guy. But things are about to get even weirder, since the tower complex is surrounded by invisible walls, and there is a huge irradiated pit nearby. He tries going around the pit to avoid the radiation, but it's blocked off as well. There is something more interesting though on the horizon, a huge barricade of walls and barbed wire. Beyond the barricade, there is nothing but an endless stretch of land. But Dr. Bosch keeps on going, discovering a new landmark in the desert, simply named Canyon Wreckage. The radio signal ends abruptly and the sandstorm is approaching as the player navigates through the junk. Sadly, the video ends without a satisfying conclusion, as Dr. Bosch is unable to go anywhere because of all the invisible walls. It's almost like the game is trying to prevent him from reaching areas that hold vital clues for this whole quest. If that's the case, then why did the quest appear in the first place? The radio tower complex awaits someone to penetrate its invisible defenses and find the truth hidden within. The next entry is called Ground, with a description saying, "Would be a cool player home if it weren't for the stairs." Dr. Bosch is completely unfazed by all this spookiness. I love it. The atmosphere in this episode is phenomenal, starting strong with the player finding an endless underground set of stairs that leads to a bunker, hiding a variety of interesting stuff inside, like broken computers, a briefcase that acts like a mine, tons of casino chips, a usable bedroll kit, a lantern which looks like a lead pipe, and the platinum chip for some reason, which of course isn't explained at all. Not much else inside the bunker, besides a few tidbits of information from a broken console, like photos of industrial sites and documents, and short emails saying the following: "Loading it into the console crashes everything. I knew he'd pull something like this. And, you sure this is the right truck?" Exiting the bunker, Dr. Bosch tries reaching the quest's marker, finding scrap piles around the wasteland and fish. Yeah, looks like the sandstorm going on brought some fish along for the ride. But the weirdest and most chilling discovery happens at the end of the video, with a player finding a giant bottomless pit, engulfed in darkness. With the radio tower complex abandoned, and some info from the underground bunker, we are closer than ever to reaching the next stage of the M. Johnson quest. Let's see what happens when Dr. Bosch gazes into the abyss and the abyss gazes back. Weird Glow is a short video not connected to the ARG, and you can clearly tell, since the aspect ratio is 16:9, the quality is full HD, the character is different, and the HUD is blue. Even the description says, "Video isn't mine, I can't really see the glow." Here the player kills a random mercenary and climbs a hill. That's pretty much it. There seems to be a strange bloom effect going on as well. He also appears to be constantly looking at a specific area, like he's waiting for something to pop up at any second. What could that something be? I guess we'll never know. Returning to the ARG, we have a video named Down. The description says, "Long way down." It sure is, since Dr. Bosch goes down the pitch black pit in this one. The signaling gun is useless here, as its flares are unable to pierce the darkness. Still, the player manages to find his way to the bottom. Surprisingly, all that is there is a chair, a radio, a chessboard, and a computer. Faint Morse code can be heard on the radio, but nothing I could decipher. In any case, drb0sch gives up on the improvised office rather quickly and heads to the quest marker, which leads to an invisible door hidden in the darkness, with its label being Entrance to Null. A loading screen later, he is inside a cave so dark he can barely see a few feet in front of him. He tries to get to the exit, but the cave is a maze of rock formations. It doesn't look like he'll be able to find his way easily, even with the help of a map. It's also worth noting that most of the videos in this ARG start with that old school buzzing your speakers would make if you were about to get a call from someone. No idea why it's happening, but an interesting little detail nonetheless. The next episode, titled Under, starts right where we left off, inside the dark cave. The description here says, falling apart at the seams, it seems. There is nothing really interesting inside the cave, besides some mine carts, barrels, and gigantic mutilated body parts. Okay, the last one is pretty interesting and unsettling. It seems that massive creatures were slain here and became part of the cave, as the player stumbles upon a colossal head embedded in the rock. The exploration continues with drb0sch finding a destroyed truck full of wooden crates that contain a small fortune of casino chips. After looting everything, he finds some sort of power station with generators, radio equipment, and another creepy giant head staring into the distance. Eventually, the player falls down a hole and goes deeper into the seemingly endless cave. He then finds a dead body that looks eerily like him, with the name Hieronymus B. This is a reference to a famous painter named drb0sch, an artist renowned for his deeply profound and unsettling paintings, that are as beautiful as they are disturbing. Investigating the corpse, we find a note labeled Instructions. It just says, set it up, you will know where, unknown friends will come to you. Could this be related to the giant dead creatures we encountered before? drb0sch leaves the station and goes down another tunnel, with no way of going back. Thankfully he escapes, but then enters an empty room with broken doors. This is a test room used by the game developers to test dynamic enemy spawning, but it looks glitchy and broken here. The video concludes as the player descends a long flight of stairs, accompanied by eerie music, eventually entering a new room. The screen then glitches out and the video ends abruptly. A very eerie episode with lots of cool and unsettling moments. The mention of Hieronymus B ruined my immersion a bit, but overall a great horror experience. Entry 11 of the series is named Somewhere, and the description says, I never finished that book. Vague as always. We're still in the testing room, but something is different. The player has taken some heavy damage and most of his equipment is gone. The way back is blocked off by a white void, so the only way to go is forward. The large dining hall is devoid of anything really interesting besides a large painting on the wall with the faces censored. Creepy ambient music is playing in the background as the player fiddles with a menu. Here we see that his name is drb0sch, he's level 8, his left leg is crippled, and he seems to be addicted to some chem. There is a plate at the dining table that has a steak and acrylonitrile, with a book on the left titled Trimorphic Protenoia. Acrylonitrile is an organic compound used in the manufacture of fibers for use in clothing. It is extremely toxic and can even cause cancer if not handled properly. Trimorphic Protenoia is an ancient text from the New Testament Apocrypha. The text describes 3 descents narrated by Barbello. Barbello refers to the first emanation of God in Gnosticism, and his voice represents the source of life, knowledge and the first thought, explaining that Sophia descended to counter the plan of the demon drb0sch. In Gnosticism, drb0sch is the malevolent being who created the material world, imprisoning everyone's soul within. Sophia refers to the essence of the human soul and the feminine nature of God. I'm only scratching the surface here, as the Gnosticism rabbit hole goes way deeper than that. In any case, drb0sch consumes the book as it's a restorative item, and his speed increases by 3. The stake heals his injuries, and the acrylonitrile does nothing. Leaving the dining hall, the player crosses the white void and enters a series of large empty rooms, with someone looming in the distance. He can't get any closer though, since the last room is full of radiation. He decides to leave and explore some more, crossing a black void and entering a small house. Upstairs we find various radio equipment emitting a piercing frequency. There is a computer as well, containing broken text entries and passages from books such as Moby Dick and free versions of Judas. drb0sch tries leaving the house, but it seems like the layout has changed, blocking his escape. He sleeps for a bit and the house returns to normal, letting him return to the dining hall. The episode ends with him sitting down and chilling by the bar. A very eventful video with great build-up. It feels like the story has become more abstract, abandoning the plot threads from the previous episodes. We also establish that the dead ghoul the player found at the cave was indeed him. Does this mean that the game is addressing the player personally? We'll see. Up next we have Exploring, with a description saying Surveying. drb0sch enters a new room, a giant swimming pool. Faint static and chatter can be heard in the background, but there's no one there. He continues looking around, finding a locked door. For the first time in the series, he opens up the console and tries to use the unlock command on it, but the screen glitches out and an explosion damages him. The map has also changed to a large red symbol. Why didn't he use the console earlier? Seems a bit suspicious. Leaving the locked door behind, he enters a new area, the creepiest one yet. It's a never-ending black void accompanied by the sound of radio static and Morse code in the background. Thankfully, he escapes pretty quickly and is back to the testing room, but it seems like a large structure is blocking his way. He then decides to take the elevator to an abandoned factory. The ambience of the machinery is overwhelming, but he manages to find the key in one of the boxes. He uses the key to unlock the bunker door from the start of the video and proceeds further inside, discovering a map, a cave, and a silo. The player also fights the first enemy of the series, a radroach. Abandoning the creature in an endless loop of falling into nothingness, he continues with his investigation. The walls have a sickly yellow tint, but at least the sweet roll is comforting enough. After sleeping on an upside-down bed, loud noises start blaring out from a nearby radio. Among the beeping, the static, and the music, a faint hello is also audible. drb0sch smacks the radio around and the noise quiets down. As he's walking around the long yellow corridors, a door suddenly opens on its own. Inside is a bathtub that teleports the player to even more corridors, only this time they are green and enveloped in darkness. Not much else happens after that, except for the player finding a small infirmary with a dead body on one of the beds. At that moment, footsteps can be heard approaching the player. He runs across the hall, trying to find some place to hide, but the footsteps continue getting closer and the episode ends. Not a very eventful entry, but all the different locations were very atmospheric and creepy, and the ending was great as well, building up more anticipation for the next episode. Unfortunately, the next entry is not really connected to the rest of the series. It's simply titled Intro, with the description being June 1st, 2012, 18:58:23, scraping the hard drive, managed to salvage this. It's just the game's title sequence that plays before entering the main menu, but heavily distorted and with a different background music. Not much else to it. Let's continue. Episode 14 is called Pod, and the description says, a vid or two left to salvage, the rest are beyond repair. Does that mean we're nearing the end of the series? Anyway, we're back in the dark corridors, but no one is chasing us anymore. So it's back to exploring, as drb0sch finds a room where everything is made for giants, and some kind of large gathering room where it's illegal to sit on the chairs. Beyond the solid curtains is another room, with a newspaper page on one of the walls. It's too blurry to make out, but it definitely says Las Vegas Evening Review on the title. Leaving the large hall, the player finds a warehouse with a strange pod in the center. Inside the pod is a decayed corpse, with nothing but bones and gibs remaining. Instead of interacting like anyone would, drb0sch instead deploys the briefcase and brings it close to the pod, thus completing the M. Johnson quest. I guess he followed the instructions from episode 10? Very unintuitive and very underwhelming actually, since no unknown friends appeared. After that, he uses an elevator to reach another caved-in area with very dense vegetation. Exploring around, he finds another corpse that looks just like him, but with no name this time. The corpse's face looks significantly bloodier than the one we saw a few episodes back. Could this be a warning of some kind? The player goes deeper into the cave and discovers even more dead bodies of his character, and a large tunnel that leads to an even larger cave with a big white monolith inside. The episode ends as soon as he interacts with a monolith. The M. Johnson quest is finally concluded, with an unsatisfying ending. But there's still more to find out, it seems, as we still don't know what lies beyond the white void. The penultimate episode in the series is titled Salvaged, with a description being still looking for more clips. Right off the bat, things are very surreal. The player has interacted with a white door and is now in a foreboding black void with tiles randomly strewn about. Nearby is a table with two chairs and a skeleton that acts as an NPC but doesn't do anything. drb0sch tries leaving the void and we cut to a different clip of him inside a broken down building in the wasteland. It looks like he's by the large radio tower complex from the start of the adventure. The desert is shrouded in darkness with a black sun looming over the horizon. Traversing the ruins, a distant explosion can be seen by the towers as the creepy background music starts getting louder. More explosions shake the very ground drb0sch is walking on. He finds cover within a cave and collects some mushrooms. The tunnels lead to a caved-in room with a bed, some provisions, a shotgun, and human remains inside. There is a door that leads back out. We are now at the top of a mountain, and darkness has covered the entire world. Nearby we discover a small campsite with a headless corpse named Last Man and a gun next to it. Ignoring the typo, it looks like he used the weapon to end his life. The video ends with drb0sch looking at the dark yellow sky and drawing his shotgun. It seems that the wasteland has deteriorated since we were last outside. Will drb0sch manage to overcome the darkness? Only one more video left now. Finally, we've reached the last entry. Its title is Nowhere, and the description says, "Result was pretty mangled, techniques didn't really work." I've gotten emails from people saying they've had similar things happen to them in-game, but I've yet to receive a single video. We'll wait some more. I wonder if this is setting up a more interactive portion of the ARG. Anyway, the video plays out more like a collection of gameplay clips instead of raw unedited footage. It starts with loud beeping and a blood-red sky, then transitions back to the wasteland, with Dr. Bosch trying to leave the radio tower complex, but there is nowhere to go. The next clip shows him higher up in the building, but the footage is pretty glitchy. After that, we see the player inside for only a few moments before we cut back to the wasteland at the top of the radio tower complex. A combination of different transmissions can be heard in the background as he moves away from the towers, armed with an assault rifle.
I guess I must seem very cold-blooded about this, but I don't recall ever having been very much preoccupied with that.
The darkness is overwhelming and the landscape is barren. The next clip shows us back inside, with the sky red like in the beginning. The player is sneaking and something is stalking him nearby, as the threat indicator displays caution on top. He tries sleeping and the video cuts to black, with disturbing beeping sounds playing. For about a minute, all we can see is the sky and the radio tower. There is no HUD either, possibly indicating that we don't see this from the player's perspective. After that, Dr. Bosch continues sneaking. Looks like he's not detected now. Dropping to a lower floor, he investigates an abandoned office and looks at his map, which is now just a red, featureless square. He looks around some more, finds a key, and checks out the newspaper we saw in episode 14. The headlines say, "House under investigation, Robco's future uncertain," and "Strange lights over Param," which is a town in Nevada. The player proceeds into an underground station as the ambience gets louder and we cut to the final clip of the video. Two creatures can be seen on the HUD's compass and the threat indicator displays danger. Something is coming. Dr. Bosch moves closer to the edge of the cliff and the ground shakes for a moment. He starts shooting but we can't make out his targets. The video ends. And that concludes the series, at least for now. Will we have more episodes? What is gonna happen next? I have no idea, but I'd love to see more. This series was a great atmospheric horror experience. Nothing too extraordinary or goofy happened. It remained somewhat realistic, relying on building up atmosphere and portraying surreal and cryptic scenes, without shoving cliché horror tropes in your face. Sure, some of the episodes dragged on for way too long with nothing exciting happening. Some scenes were too scripted or ended too abruptly, and the last episode was too disjointed to properly follow. But it was overall a very unique and captivating experience. Fallout New Vegas can be quite creepy on its own, due to how desolate every place is, but this channel elevates the horror aspect even further, without relying on jump scares or overdone creepypasta shit, and for that it deserves some respect. Check it out and let me know if I missed anything from the story so far. For now, that's all I had to say about the Dr. Bosch Fallout New Vegas ARG. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stuff. You know how it goes. You can also join my Discord and follow me on Twitter. Have a great day, and until next time, take care and have fun.